Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Niomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today is a recap episode, and I'm recapping the conversation that I had with Tiffany Jones. Now, Tiffany is a cancer survivor, and she also cared for her parents during their end-of-life experience due to cancer. So she, in amongst her grief after the loss of her mum, her dad had already passed, but she was really grief stricken, and she decided that she needed a big, hairy, audacious goal to be able to focus on. And so she decided that she'd climb Kilimanjaro. Now, Mount Kilimanjaro, also known as the Mountain of Greatness, is the tallest freestanding mountain in the world, and nearly a third of all climbers fail to reach the summit. So it's quite a big mountain, and it's used by people as a real physical challenge, a mental challenge, an emotional challenge to get through. And so we have this thing I often talk about of, you need to feel the emotions that are coming through when life throws challenges your way. But once you've felt them and you've sat in them and experienced them, you have to get to a point where it's time to deal. So it's kind of like feel and deal, right? And so when she was at that point, she knew she had to do something. She had to move on and she had to deal. Mount Kilimanjaro was her deal, right? It was something for her to work on. Now, this was a big, huge, hairy, audacious goal for her. And, she knew that she had to do preparation for it. She knew it was going to be something out of her comfort zone, but she had such a strong why. Her why for doing it was so strong that it really took out all of the obstacles created by the how. And, Tiffany had a really great saying of, I make plans and God laughs. And I love that because there's a lot of the time where we are setting ourselves up for a particular goal or an objective that we've set out for. And sometimes we lose the focus or lose the sense of knowing that it's the journey towards that goal where the gold lives, right? Yes, a goal is great and hitting those objectives. And look, I'm an inner achiever, right? So hitting objectives is my thing. But sometimes it's not always about getting to the summit of something, of that mountain. It's about the journey that's created on the way. It's about the progress, the learning, the development, the growth that's needed to get you into a point where you could reach the summit. So Tiffany decided that to be able to do something big, hairy, and audacious such as this, she just had to take the first step. Her why was that strong in driving her that it was giving her enough reasons to take the step she needed. Now, her first step was just buying a pair of sneakers, right? It didn't have to be something really huge. It just had to be, what's the next thing, the one thing that I can do right now that will get me closer to my goal or get me closer to the end game. So after she bought a pair of shoes, she's like, okay, what's my next thing that I have to do, my next small step? And she decided that the gym would be helpful. So her next step was just to drive to where the gym was and become familiar with that space and the route on the way to go there. And then her next step was walking into the gym, having a tour, familiarizing herself with it. And her next step was joining the gym. And that whole process of getting ready was just a series of small steps. And this can be taken into our leadership and our lives, right? That it's not always the big, huge jumps we make that create our progress. It's those small, consistent steps that we take that move us closer towards our goal. Now, she needed funding to get to this objective, to be able to reach this goal and to be able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So she started a GoFundMe page. She started the GoFundMe page, and she actually basically called her whole experience climbing Kilimanjaro to kick cancer's butt, right? Because that's what it was about for her. And when she started that GoFundMe page, she had no idea how it was going to be funded. She just knew that the why was strong enough. That why was pulling her. And so that's what she was doing. She was just following this purpose that she'd found. Now, just by, I don't know if it was sheer coincidence or divine luck, but she was able to get all of her funding put through by one sponsor. And that one sponsor was a what do they call it? A cereal brand, right? But the cereal brand that had these community sponsorships that they did chose her and actually funded her trip over there. But it was actually her dad's favorite cereal brand. Now, if anyone out there believes that there are no coincidences, then I'm with you. I think that that was actually something that was meant to happen for her, right? The connection on that was too strong to ignore. But she kept going, she kept progressing. So now she had the funds. She just had to get herself to be, ready for this trip and just take those small steps, just getting herself there. Now, there was a few obstacles in that space. One of them is within herself, excuse me, was that she sometimes felt like, she was comparing herself to the outside world, which would sometimes impact on her own self-belief systems. So that was one obstacle that she had to overcome. Another one was that she got diagnosed with cancer herself. So she got her cancer diagnosis, and for some people that would be enough to go, you know what, I have to stop. But for Tiffany, did the opposite. It just fueled her more. It fueled her more to go and achieve this goal. And now, even though it was personal before because it was about her parents, now it was really personal, right? It's really now her. She's kicking cancer's butt with this walk. So and this trek up the mountain. So she worked with the doctors to still be able to do the trip. She had to have minor surgery just to remove what they'd found there, but the majority of her surgery was going to be done when she came back, and her actual treatment was going to happen and start more formally once she returned. So she was more worried in that space, she said, about the doctors telling her that she couldn't do this trip than she was about them telling her that she had cancer. Now, this isn't because cancer isn't serious. No, of course it is. But for her, she'd put so much energy and effort into getting herself for this trip. Her why was so strong that even a diagnosis of cancer couldn't compare, and she couldn't comprehend not doing this trip because of that strong why. So, for her, she actually said that the climb was bigger than her, right? It was bigger than her. And even though those obstacles popped up, the why pulled her through the obstacles, right? When something's meant to be and your why is strong enough, then you're going to be pulled through those obstacles to get to your goal. And that's exactly what happened in Tiffany's case. Now, Tiffany's also a school teacher, and she thought, well, while I'm in Africa, I would love to get some resources and drop it off at the local school. So she had planned for herself to arrive a little bit earlier so that she could go and do that and visit the schools in the area. And then from there, she was going to then climb the mountain. But as she mentioned earlier, she makes plans and God laughs. And unfortunately, even though she had planned to go there a couple of days earlier to be able to work with the children and support the teachers and children in the school, the plane that she was supposed to be catching had mechanical issues. And so her flights were delayed by a couple of days. So what that meant is when she actually flew in, she had to go straight to her mountain climb, and she missed out on that part of her trip. But Tiffany being Tiffany, just, soldiered on and continued going. And, there are no accidents. I'm going to say that a few times during this. I truly believe that. And I think that this was part of the plan, even though she didn't realize it at the time, right? So she ended up starting a trek. And as she did her trek, it's a 6-day journey up to the summit of the mountain, and there's 8 to 9 hours of per day spent hiking. So she had to be really conscious of that. And there's a Tanzanian saying, pole, pole, which is slowly, slowly. It's a well-known saying of the Tanzanian people. And so that was the mantra that she used to make her way up the mountain with. And, as you climb up a mountain like that, the atmosphere gets thinner and thinner. And I think the total height was 19 something thousand feet, which is pretty much the same height as planes flying. And, Tiffany did say that she was well above the clouds in that space. So pretty bloody high, right? So it's a bit of a challenge, though, to go slow when you're climbing a mountain like that, because you sort of have this adrenaline and you're all ready to go and you want to rush, but you need to keep a steady pace to be able to make it to the summit. You can't be in that rush space, because if you're in the rush trying to make it up the mountain, you can create a whole heap of dramas for yourself. Your body might not be ready for it. You might, it minimizes your ability to climatize as you're ascending. There's all those sorts of things. So she took the pole advice and she made it up the mountain slowly, slowly. But unfortunately for Tiffany, she did have a fall. So she had a bit of a fall and she slid down the mountain. And when she did that, she had, kind of hurt herself. She was hypoxic, I think they call it, which means there wasn't enough oxygen in her blood system because of the altitude. And her goal was the summit, right? So she's looking at the goal thinking, this is where I need to be, but her body just wasn't letting her do that. And so in that space, she had to again review, what's this trip about, right? Why was the summit the goal? Was the summit the goal because the ego told her that she had to make it to the summit? Was the summit the goal because that was the expectation of everyone around her, is you don't go to Kilimanjaro not to go to the top, Was it her expectation because she had a fear of failure and she would have seen that as a failure to not make it to the top? And if I just jump in here, a lot of people would see that as failure, not making it to the top. And when she first told me her story, I was a little bit like, oh, that's a shame. However, sometimes our slip-ups, pun intended, actually are for a bigger purpose. So she then reassessed all of this positioning and she realized that comfortable that her journey may not look the same as others or have the same end game, or be structured in the same way, doesn't take away from anything and doesn't make it less amazing. So being comfortable with that is the step that she needed to take. And she had to sit in that space and really let that sink in, that it was still amazing for her to get there, right? It was amazing that she bought the sneakers, went to the gym, got the funding from the cereal brand. The plane was broken, still was able to get on a plane. They got it fixed in time. She got cancer. They were still allowing her to fly after her minor surgery to be able to climb the mountains. There were so many things that that she was able to focus on and have gratitude for in that particular moment. So she created this world of acceptance within herself. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to shift my goal. And we need to do this in leadership and life too, right? Sometimes we need to pivot. Sometimes it's not the end goal that we're actually meant to do. It's the exploration, and it's the steps taken to get there that gives us what we need. So she shifted her goal, and she shifted it to be able to walk back down the mountain.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Niomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Niomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, Then review the courses, offers, and services at getupandgoconsulting.com.au.
So she wanted to walk down on her own 2 feet. Apparently, there was a helicopter there. So some people were having to be helicoptered off. Apparently, there was also stretchers carrying people, but she wanted to get back down the mountain by herself. So she pivoted in that spot, realized that what she was doing wasn't working. It wasn't going to get her to the space where she thought she wanted to be. So she changed what the goal was, right? And then it was getting her closer to that goal. So when she was walking down, she used this space to have some self-reflection and really think about, why she was there, what she was doing, all those sorts of things. As she was doing this reflection, she ended up hearing her mum's voice. And, as I said earlier, her mum had passed, but her mum's voice came through and spoke to her and said, sometimes it's stronger to be gentle than it is to fight. And this is such a true statement. And it really resonated with me because in my younger years, I was all about the fight, right? Someone did me wrong. You cross me, it's on like Donkey Kong, right? I didn't have really high emotional intelligence, but this is something I've worked on over the years and I've got to a reasonable space now. And I think that's what was coming through for her, right? You can fight your body and you could have fought that and you could have made it to the top of the summit. Definitely. But is that really what you were supposed to do, right? Is it stronger for you to be gentle on your body and actually accept that, okay, I wasn't meant to be in that space in this particular day and I'm going to change, right? I'm going to pivot and refocus my energy because we have this automatic reflex to trigger when we're triggered to fight. So whenever we're triggered and our enoughness is questioned, then we have this space of going, okay, I need to justify myself. I need to validate myself. I need to make myself significant because all of those things then feed my enoughness. And so we go into this defensive space and this hard space. And so having that mantra as she was walking down the mountain really changed her flow and it changed how she was handling that situation and also has resonated now through her whole life. And it stayed with her and it now changes how she looks at everything in her life. So it allowed her this space and it allows her more space moving forward to pause, reflect, have that self-awareness space and realize that not everything needs to have a fight. And so she asks herself the question now when she's in that triggered space, is this the right time to fight or is it better to let it go? And we're often told, don't sweat the small stuff, this shall pass, all of those sorts of things. But we need to be comfortable with that. And not a lot of people are. There's not a lot of people that can comfortably say, I'm not going to fight right now. I'm just going to let this pass. And this, this comes from a real deep place of strength. It's a real strength for us to be able to not let people affect our enoughness and not allow people to trigger that fight response in us. And it's an art and it's refined over time. It's not something that you just wake up with one day. It's something that we work on during our own healing processes, right? Doesn't matter who we are, where we sit, what job we have, whether we're, leaders, business owners, parents, children, doesn't matter where we are. We all have something inside of us from some experience that we've had to heal or we are healing. And so this is just another one of those examples. So anyway, she got back down the mountain. She walked herself down the mountain. And when she got to the bottom, she realized that she had 2 extra days. So in those 2 days, she used that to go and see the schools that she missed out on seeing because of the issues with the flight. So for me, I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem like a coincidence, right? So while she was waiting for the rest of the group, she went in and she was helping and giving all of the resources that she brought over, sharing them with the students of the school. And she just had this moment where she realized that this was her goal. This was the summit. this was where she was meant to be and what she was meant to be doing. And so her body, her mind, her emotions, everything worked together to get her to this point, which is why she didn't get to the top of the mountain. If she'd pushed herself and got to the top of the mountain, she wouldn't have had this opportunity. And this opportunity is now turned into a life purpose for her, right? So when she first walked in, she realized and noticed that there was no desks, no paper, no supplies, no resources, and the kids were ecstatic at getting all of the supplies she did bring over, the markers, texters, pens, pencil, paper, all that sort of stuff. They were wrapped and they were so happy. But she noticed there's something in the teacher that was looking, and it was one of those, oh yeah, this again. And not that we're taking away from how awesome it is for people taking supplies, but it's kind of a bit of a band-aid fix, right? Sometimes we're just we're pulling out the weeds, but not the roots. And so the weeds just come back again. And that's kind of the situation that they're in this school in Tanzania. So, or in Africa. I'm not 100% sure it was Tanzania, so I'll change that to Africa. So this just pushed her to go, you know what? I can do something about this. And she went into this space, in this philanthropist space, and started her own non-for-profit called Patchworks Inc. And so all of the details are in the show notes, the original show notes of that episode. So you can go and have a look if you'd love to donate. And I think it's a great cause to donate to. So, teachers all over the world have issues on trying to get resources and trying to do things, especially in the public schooling system. There's never enough money to go around. But their problem was they didn't even have the shops to go to get some of these resources, right? So it's just another level of the challenges and obstacles that they have to overcome when trying to educate these children. So she then thought, no, I've got to do this. I've got to start this non-for-profit. So she came back. She went back home after her trip, and she set up this non-for-profit to help the teachers, right? To give the teachers the resources so they can improve their lessons and the learning for their students and that whole experience for the learning journey that they're on over there in that space. And it really made her feel good to know that she could make the difference. And she even spoke in the interview about a moment where she took a laptop over for one of the teachers, and just how amazingly grateful and happy that made him, but also how amazingly happy that made her. And for those of you who have a bit of an open mind and believe in those energy systems within our bodies, when we give, it activates our heart energy center. And that's why we feel good. That's why we love helping people. That's why we love giving. And so when we find a charity or a non-for-profit or something that we can actually give resources to, whether that be our time or whether that be money, that actually fills us with joy. Without much effort. It's a really good way to do it. And, I've used this as a bit of an experiment as well. I've had a day where I wasn't really feeling overly great. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put this to test. I'm going to donate some money. So I decided to donate to rural aid because it's important when we're donating as well, our time and money, that we're donating to things that actually have relevance for us, because that creates a stronger karmic and energetic connection, right? So I decided rural aid because they feed me, right? Let's be honest. The farmers out there are producing the food for the country and probably for other countries as well. Now, it was only $20, only donated $20. But as soon as I did the donation, I felt so much better. And as the day went on, I felt better and better just from that small donation. So I challenge you, if you're having a bad day, try donating to something. Maybe it's Patchworks Inc. Now, although this is in a different country, it's still good to support, children, anything with children, because children are the future of this world and are our future. So adding to the education of those children does come back, because that then expands the opportunities for them. And who knows, they may come and have contact with with the people, the children and grandchildren and all those sorts of things. You never know how things work. It's an amazing way to work. So, it's a good cause to contribute to. And now that she's created that, she goes back and gives back and takes those resources over, and she's set up this like 10-day experience. So she's even inviting other people to go to, because it just fills her heart so much to be there that she wants to share that with other people. So I think she said there's a 5-day service element and then a 5-day exploration or safari element as part of this trip. And she does have a few spaces left for their next one, which I think is June 2024. Just check out the interview in the podcast, and links to contact her if you're interested in that are in the show notes for that podcast as well. And that was episode 57, Climbing Kilimanjaro to Kick Cancer's Butt with Tiffany Jones. So definitely go and have a listen to that. But I think the real theme and the real message that came through with my conversation with her is there's a few things, really. There are no accidents, right? There's divine timing on things, on the way that things happen for her to put her in the right place at the right time to be able to fulfill her life purpose. But I think the key thing is that sometimes what we think our end game isn't our end game at all. And maybe that's just the preparation for that end game is also preparing us for something bigger than ourselves. Maybe it's putting us in the path to be able to have the contacts or the reach with people that will end up creating something bigger than ourselves. And I know in the end, Tiffany actually said that the thing that she has the most gratitude for is that fall, because without that fall, these people wouldn't be getting these resources. She wouldn't be getting this joy, and she wouldn't be able to spread the joy with other people that participate in the experience with her. And I think it's a really good example of that connectedness and oneness that we have, that we all have. We're all connected in some way, even if we don't realize it. And it might be from the person that I interact with today is the person you interact with tomorrow. And I've set their tone and their mood for how they interact with you. But the way I kind of look at it, and I had a teacher once tell me this, is it's like a woven rug, right? And all of us are a thread in this woven rug. And so we have contact with every thread in that rug, either directly or indirectly with the other threads we touch, which I think is just beautiful. And we have this connectedness and this oneness that exists. So what we put out in the world, this is how what we put out in the world comes back, right? Because whatever we're putting out is a vibrational match for what we then attract back in. But it's just a really beautiful way to look at this rug. And when we're in this rug, sometimes there might be a pattern in the rug, but for our thread to make that pattern, we might have to do some sharp lefts and some sharp rights and do an extra knot. And while we're doing that, we're like, whoa, we're disorientated. Maybe we're going through a bit of emotional upheaval. Maybe we're just like disoriented, in this space of unfamiliarity, and it's creating us anxiety, or it's creating, other emotions that are affecting us, not realizing that this is preparing us for something that's ahead. Now, we still should feel it. We don't dismiss it and go, oh, there must be something better coming. I've just got to get on with it. No, we need to feel the emotion. But it's once we felt the emotion and we do move from feel to deal that we can then look at life differently. And look, there's some things in my life that have happened that I know are purposeful, but I have no idea what the purpose is. I just kind of know that it wouldn't have happened unless there was a good reason for it to happen. And I think that comes with that trust element. But that doesn't take away from the fact that some of those experiences were terrible, are really shitty, horrible feelings to be in, but it was part of being in them and feeling them so that I could go and deal. So thank you very much for listening to this recap. I was so grateful to have connected with Tiffany and be able to share her story on catching the octopus. I think it's an amazing story. It really warmed my heart, and I hope that it's added some value to you too. If you haven't listened to it already, like I said, episode 57, Climbing Kilimanjaro to Kick Cancer's Butt with Tiffany Jones, go ahead and have a listen. I know you won't be disappointed. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.